Rolling.
Good evening. Welcome to the Meet the Candidates meeting for Shoalhaven Greens for our candidates for the state election 2019. This is pre-selection, of course, for the seats of Kiama and South Coast. Our candidates are Nina Sheen for Kiama and Kim Stevenson for South Coast. I'll ask each of them to speak in turn, and you have up to 10 minutes each to give your spiel. You may shorten it if you wish. I will keep time. Following that, we'll be taking questions from the audience. I shall moderate the questions if required. So our first candidate is Nina Sheen.
Thank you. Well, firstly, I'd like to do acknowledgement of country. We are in the land of the Yuin Nation. I'd like to pay my respects to the elders of past, present and emerging, and always remember that this is and always will be Aboriginal land, and it's something I'm very passionate about, that we honour and respect Aboriginal people, include them in our constitution and allow the truth-telling of their stories. So why would I decide to become a candidate for the state elections? Well, there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic or popular, but he must take it because conscience tells him it is right. It's a quote from Martin Luther King. This is uncomfortable to be in a position where you're standing to be a candidate, but what is comfortable about it is it's time that people from the Greens stood up for what is just, what is fair and what is equal for people in our community. So my raison d'etre for standing as a candidate would be to bring values back into the political arena with sound, practical ideas and projects to provide opportunities for members of our city to be the best version of themselves. And back in the day, when I was a young girl growing up in Belmore, I believe those opportunities were available, and I don't see them being as available for our children, and I want to bring back those old values back in our communities so that we can have our youth flourish once again. So we've got 4 pillars with the Greens, and we have a Greens manifesto, which is something, after reading, something we can refer to in the Greens to move agendas forward that's going to benefit all in our community. So the 4 pillars, as we all know, is environmental protection, peace, non-violence and disarmament, equality and social justice, and grassroots democracy. We need to put people before profits. So the Shoalhaven, Kiama area, which is a part of the electorate that I stand for, it's a place where the sun shines, where we can capitalise on our natural resources and local intelligence. We can create a centre of excellence in renewable energy. Wouldn't that be great? Where we can have community of solar farms, solar panels on our schools, our hospitals, renewable energy on our aged care facilities, our jails, council buildings and community hubs. It's about time that energy becomes truly cost effective and that energy companies put people before profits. In dovetailing that, we've got climate change. It's a real issue in our community, and it impacts the health of many of our community, particularly our vulnerable and our elderly. So all people are directly and disproportionately affected by the threats of air and water pollution and climate change, given the extreme weather events, and they're more likely to be confronted with environmental and health hazards as a result. As mentioned, it's a massive risk to our elderly who are vulnerable and prone to increased health issues as a result of the heat, and we've already experienced it. I've experienced it as a nurse in the Shoalhaven. That's why it's important to take action on climate change. You know, on certain terms, we must stand united behind all of our country's working people and demand a just transition to 100% clean and renewable energy future that can also create sustainable jobs and innovations and also protect our land, water and environment into the future. But we need to deprivatise energy company monopolies so there is fair and equitable access and, again, cost effective. As a Greens member, it is important that we value and nurture the environment by stopping deforestation, reduce our carbon footprint, and as we think about climate change and begin to reverse the damage in our environment that impact our farmers, our health and well-being, as well as our coastline and assets, which are at risk from damage as storms come through, the low pressure storms. We are the third biggest exporter of coal, and we don't even count that as part of our carbon footprint. We need to start leading by example and being honest and telling the truth. So I want to create a place. As a health professional, I really haven't introduced myself. I am the eldest of 8 children in my family from Italian extraction. My family are from Sydney originally, and I've moved down the south coast over the years, slowly creeping from Wollongong down here. And my background's in nursing, and I'm very passionate about the health and well-being of people. I came down to Shoalhaven I was headhunted for a project to have the stroke unit in the Shoalhaven, which has been a great asset. But as I'll talk further, we have an asset, but we don't have the health professionals here to provide the services that people truly deserve, given our ageing population. So I want to create a place where we have health professionals and specialists locally, so the elderly and people with disabilities and those with sick children requiring intensive support are able to access it in the Kiama Shoalhaven electorate by providing better resources in telehealth, which means we have to improve our Wi-Fi and broadband services, attracting specialists to live, work and play in the Kiama Shoalhaven region. People wait up to 6 months to see a neurologist in this region unless they travel north. And this is not best practice nor ideal for the vulnerable in our community. Over the years, we've seen health services merge and change. They became local, and then they merged with other area health services. And watching this over the years, I see the enormous disadvantage of mergers with other larger cities, that the regional cities actually miss out on services as a result. I think it's high time that the state again looked at localising the health districts so that people can get their needs met locally by local people and not by high-end services where there's disconnection and lack of support. I'd like to improve hospital mental health services, and this is really important as a nurse that I've seen over the years. We have people in our hospitals who come to the emergency department and they all come through one doorway. So we have the acute, sick, elderly come through, as well as people with mental health problems who can be acutely unwell. This can be disturbance for people who have high acuity needs. Ideally, we need to look at separating the acute emergency department admissions and creating a separate mental health acute facility so that people in both areas are triaged correctly and best outcomes and best practice is maintained. Having that model will be eventually cost effective because people will be seen in a timely manner and reduce their hospital stays. We need to also improve our overall hospital patient to nurse ratios, not only in our hospitals but in every aged care facility, with a focus to attract more men, particularly into the aged care industry, because the elderly gentlemen in aged care facilities generally are taken care of by women, and a lot of them do like the company of young men. And due to the rate of pay and the ratio problems in aged care facilities, we don't seem to attract men, and it's a really worthy profession to be part of, and it's something we could be working towards, attracting more men into the industry as well. We want to maximise services such as dental so that everyone has equitable access to dental services across all age groups. We need to ensure that people with disabilities across the community, including all health and education support, ramp up the effectiveness of the NDIS. We need to make sure that all kids can afford to play sport. We need a healthy community, focus back on our kids and providing opportunities for them to be included and have their health and well-being maintained through sport. Youth programs to enhance job opportunities. We need to work with other organisations that are doing it well and allow the Kiama, Shoalhaven area, not only Wollongong but the regional towns, access to resources and professionals so that we can run those jobs locally And thank you. And in conjunction with a TAFE system to fund free programs. Something very close to my heart is Indigenous self-determination, inclusion and support in health, education. It's very important that we pass that Uluru Statement, allowing our First Nations people to be included in the Constitution, as well as the truth-telling, Makarrata, and fostering their inclusion in all community aspects. We need to invest in our very young. Our very own Brian Campbell, he's an OAM in the Shoalhaven. He's done leading research into having children educated early. It's very important that we provide free programs for children 0 to 7 so that we can enhance their development, so that they have better opportunities into the future, and provide free universal childcare. Time's up. One more thing though, drug and alcohol issues are massive in this area. It is a state issue. We do need an injection of funds. We desperately need a detox program here in the Shoalhaven that's easy to access, that's culturally appropriate for Aboriginal people. I'm part of the CDAT team, and I fully support this initiative with that group in advocating for this program. There's lots of other things I would love to say, but time is up. And I thank you all for listening, and I'm really very pleased to be in this position, to be a candidate, and I want to acknowledge Kim today for standing for the South Coast. I think it's marvellous.
Thank you, Nina. Now we ask Kim Stevenson to speak as the candidate for, Greens candidate for South Coast.
Excellent, thanks Howard, and thanks Nina. Alright, so good evening fellow Greens, thanks for coming today, do appreciate it. And I'm assuming that this video goes out to all members, so I will be talking about myself even though everyone here knows me anyway. So firstly I'd like to acknowledge we are on Wadi Wadi Wandandian Aboriginal land, which was never ceded, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So you've come today to meet the candidate, the potential Greens candidate for South Coast. You may want to know what I'm going to do for the South Coast, or for you, how I'm going to represent the Greens, or all of the above. So we'll start with the obvious introduction of myself. So politics was always a part of my household, discussions in front of the TV while watching ABC News, and my parents heading out for local candidates during election time. So was the environment a part of my upbringing. For those of you who don't know, which is not anyone in this room, my father is Alan Stevenson, Shoalhaven's own orchid man, staunchly fighting against habitat destruction and for the preservation of rare and endangered orchid species, some exclusive to this area. So that's how I get my environmental chills. When in high school, I became a 90s feminist, becoming engaged with federal politics, local, national and international social justice issues. And this brings me to today, a local woman from a working class background struggling with the cost of living. So since my return to this beautiful part of the world, I saw not much had progressed in the 18 years I'd been away. I knew something had to be done, and I felt like I needed to be part of that change. So jobs and unemployment is still a major factor in this area, education, or their lack of, struggling families, and environmental destruction still continuing. After travelling the world, all my experiences culminated in my belief of the Greens 4 pillars, which I think is a great basis for life and politics. As your potential New South Wales Greens South Coast candidate, the 4 pillars and progressivism will be my guiding force, using grassroots principles to provide South Coast residents what they want and need. I can empathise with many of the issues facing some of our most vulnerable residents, such as unemployment and low socioeconomic status and insecure housing. Just a little bit from my candidate bio as well. I'm currently convener of the Shoalhaven Greens, convener of the Greens New South Wales Transport Working Group, a member of the Greens New South Wales Women Working Group, and a member of the Greens New South Wales SDC committee as well. So, what would I like to see for the South Coast? Action on climate change. So action on climate change through initiatives such as renewable energy projects, electronic vehicle charging station routes and promotion of electric vehicles. Government leading the way in better practices for planning, infrastructure, development and manufacturing, and zero waste, zero carbon initiatives. Number 2 is environmental conservation and protection. Assessing future developments in a smart way, allowing both progress and protection. Seeking areas which could benefit from state or national park status or heritage listing. Promoting and being proactive with initiatives such as banning plastic and providing alternatives. Also ensuring Indigenous community leaders have an equal say in what happens with their land for the good of the people. Which leads me to my next point, which is social justice. Yes, I am a social justice warrior. I wear that badge proudly. It's definitely not an insult for me. So when it comes to social justice, I've always been a fighter for the vulnerable, for the underdog, for those with no voice. And in some way, I am a part of that vulnerable as well. So Indigenous affairs. It's been too long and there's so much work to be done for true equality, truth-telling and self-determination for South Coast Aboriginal brothers and sisters. I intend to be an ally walking hand in hand for justice and equity. Unemployment, underemployment and poverty. This is sort of my category. Some say the area is locked up because of environmental constraints. I see this as not a problem, but an opportunity for safely utilising our greatest asset to provide and allow for employment opportunities related to smart tourism and industry. Education, TAFE. It's not rocket science to find the 20-year industry and career projections and ensure those courses are on offer at TAFE for today's kids to be skilled for future employment. In the meantime, we need to attract business and industry to this area, providing sustainable, secure, long-term jobs from entry level to senior management. I, for one, am still interested in bringing a hemp manufacturing industry here. It's a quick growing crop, soil friendly, we have plenty of open farmland and we will produce paper and building materials from the hemp. Now, above all this is UBI or Universal Basic Income. This is the great equaliser of the 21st century and I believe in its benefits wholeheartedly, of which at this point I would actually be a beneficiary. I hope to work with David Shoebridge on this matter for our local residents. A universal basic income would ensure a level of dignity to those of us who have been stripped of it and demonised by government and media for needing help in our most vulnerable of times. It's time for equality, progress and opportunity for all. Now, last but certainly not least is our public transport. Oh, what a shambles it is here. Basically non-existent, completely inadequate, and most of it privatised. We all know that we need carbon neutral, clean, reliable, timely and expanded public transport services. For our little piece of New South Wales, I believe we need small electric minibuses to connect our towns and many villages, to run more frequently for convenience and of course provide equality of opportunity. Lack of public transport was named the #1 barrier for youth employment in our area. And that leads me next to our train. Now, I see past engineering feats such as Lithgow's Zigzag Railway and other projects such as the Snowy Hydro scheme that were done many decades ago without the technology that we have today, and I'm convinced that we can build a tunnel to accommodate electrification of the rail line from Kiama to Nowra, or Bomaderry, and we won't stop there, I won't stop there, we'll keep going to Nowra and beyond down the south coast. It really is necessary. It's time to think big. People want change, they're looking for real change. People are looking for bold, progressive ideas, and people are looking for someone to fight for them. I have my principles and my beliefs, and I won't back down fighting for what is right for our environment, our humanity, and our rights. There's no convincing the other side. We set the tone, we start the conversation, and we set the rhetoric. Be bold, move forward, be progressive, be green, be the change you want to see. So I hope you consider me as your Greens New South Wales South Coast candidate, so we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. 2 minutes to speak.
Oh, okay.
Well done. I open the floor to questions. Gil.
What tunnel? What?
On the train.
Oh, for the train.
Yes, I get that. But
Yes.
Where would the tunnel? Why a tunnel?
Well, that's the way they say that it's the only way to sort of get it through, like you've got through Gerringong, is through a tunnel. And that's the reason they're using to say that they can't electrify the rail, because they reckon the tunnel will get flooded. So, according to that's the information, the engineering information I have at hand, is there would have to be a tunnel to go from Kiama to Bomaderry.
Yeah, but there's a series of tunnels existing between Kiama
Yeah.
and this side of Chihuahua.
Yeah.
And so there'd have to be
More
expansion of those
More
tunnels.
large tunnels.
Yes.
Carmel.
Would you be prepared to lobby for the use of the Opal card on our buses to enable people on
100%.
pensions and concessions?
Absolutely, 100%. This is why I want to move away from privatisation and have, you know, government run. So yes, every step of the way we'll have the Opal card.
Even on
Absolutely.
private buses though, I mean.
Oh, even on private
We would
buses
have to
too,
negotiate
yes.
with them. We would actually have to sit with them and let them know the benefits, so that, you know, we can move that project forward.
Kay.
Oh, I forgot, sorry.
Michael.
Could each of the candidates say something about the methods they would use in the Parliament to actually effect the kind of changes they've been talking about? What is the... Because, you know, the place has a pretty fearsome reputation, particularly in the bear pit. What particular approaches will you be taking to tackle those aspects of the job?
So besides speaking out when you get those opportunities to speak during, you know, when you're on the floor, state what your community bring to you, and then negotiate with other like-minded people in the Parliament to move those project forwards, and get yourself on those committees where those like-minded people are, and work out a policy and agenda to bring that to the forefront, and maybe not only have some of those policies in the Shoalhaven, but have them statewide. Things like having a Parkinson's nurse in every single hospital across the state, which is another campaign. Having the ratios of nurses in hospitals, you know, across the state. So when you start off in one place and other people see that it's going to be beneficial for their region, then those ideas can grow by that kind of negotiation. Does that answer your question? Pretty much.
Yeah,
Are you looking for something else?
Liable to come up against a brick wall
Totally.
in some of these instances. How would you tackle the wall?
I think you just need to be persistent. You can't give up on a project that's going to bring progress and benefit to the community, and you need to continually be the stand and be strong on the policy that you want to get across the line. You just can't back down. And if it doesn't work that first time, maybe give it a period of 3 months and then bring it back.
Kim.
Cool. Yes. Yeah, so I would probably just refer back to grassroots. You tend to find that when you get people interested and behind one of your ideas or a particular issue or situation, you get them to do some of the work for you through lobbying and calling, you know, other state members, etc. You know, other people that are going to be decision makers. So it's sort of a slightly multi-pronged approach. So use that grassroots to get the people in your area to know what you're trying to do and to get behind you. And also, even though some people don't like them, you just use the facts. You know, this is what's going to happen, this is what the consequence or the outcome will be, etc. This is why it's a good thing. So you sort of hit them with the facts, you know, the reality, get the people behind you to sort of help lobby for you in that particular way. So people pressure can actually make change. So if it's something that's quite divisive or seemingly divisive and partisan in Parliament, then that's probably the approach you'd have to take, I think.
Terry.
Well, first of all, let me say that don't be too intimidated, because for a start, we know one of our local members, Gareth Ward, is not a bully. Now, what I'm interested in a whole range of things, but what really interests me is how you might work together between Kiama and South Coast, because there are many issues that relate to both areas. There's some quite different and distant. The forestry issue is, I think, very much South Coast, but not entirely. But Kiama's got a different set of issues, but they come together. One thing is jobs, and those sort of initiatives. And I just draw to your attention that Amanda and I came up with a leaflet that brought both local government, both state electorates together. And I'm just wondering whether you'd be interested in working together on that sort of approach, dealing with, and it could be a whole range of issues, it might be health issues as well.
What, for Nina and I?
That's right.
Together?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We get on very well.
Because I found it to be a very useful document when you're door knocking
So
and
we
or
can,
handing out at the railway station.
so we're going to have a very good working relationship, but we would also utilise some of the clever brains in the green. So we've got Howard Jones, got yourself, people who are really passionate about policy. So my strength is with the people on the ground, and I will play to that strength. And I will also work with other people whose strengths are in policy and in going over certain speech points that I may have. And I think working with the Kiama Greens and the Shoalhaven Greens will probably and form maybe a little committee how we campaign. I know Bonnie Cassin's been really interested in supporting the process of this as well. So we do have some really strong support. We just need to pull it together and get some structure around it. What do you think?
Yeah, well, it's funny, Terry, because when I think about Nina and I running in Kiama and South Coast, I think of that flyer that you mentioned, because I think it is important and it's a really good relationship that Kiama and South Coast and Kiama and Shoalhaven have with each other. I'm not sure if you're referring to, just say that Gareth Ward won in Kiama and I won in South Coast, which is highly unlikely. But I've got no problem with working with him. I'm not sort of one of those, vengeful, like I'm going to spit the dummy and go, no, I'm not going to work with you because I don't like you. Unless he was a super racist, then probably not.
I only raise that as a bit of a...
Yeah.
But certainly what I'm saying is that when you're handing things out at the station, for instance, you've got people from, say, Bomaderry, North Nowra and that sort of catching the train, but you've got people from way down the coast. You've got both electorate people there that are interested. So if you've got something that covers both electorates, I think it's a worthwhile approach to take.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to take that approach, and I think Nina would be as well.
Are there any more questions? Lani?
Could you elaborate a little bit on the universal basic income you touched on?
Sure. So universal basic income, it's funny, I have heard the whole shebang of the universal basic income, and I can't remember every single point, but because when Richard Di Natale talked about it a little while ago, it was yes, everyone gets the same amount of money, and people thought, well, that sounds really weird. Why would you just not give it to people below a certain point? But the way he explained it actually made complete sense, and it's not equity, but it's equality. So for someone such as myself, it would actually allow me to have a livable wage. So I could actually afford to pay my bills and buy the food I need and maybe even rent somewhere. So for someone like myself, it would be life-changing. It would mean, as I said before, dignity and independence and just being able to meet the basic needs that a human has to have, right? Now, David Shoebridge has revealed to myself and Carmel and I think other people that he is looking at having... No? No? Oh, okay. Well, David Shoebridge is working on universal basic income anyway. He's something that he's interested in. I thought it might be alright for here. But yeah, so there's also, along with universal basic income, there's also jobs guarantee. So, which again is quite nuanced, and you know, it might be good to look it up, or I could send you some information. Which again might sound weird, like, oh, why are you just giving jobs to people? But as you know, the economy works when people are working and they've got money to spend, etc. So it really is an actual win-win for the economy, and that way you might not even need UBI. So, yeah. Does that help a little bit? Yep.
Carmel.
Well, I was going to say it's actually probably a federal issue,
Yeah.
UBI. So, but it doesn't mean you people both can't talk about federal things. And in lots of cases, jobs and health and education, there's big crossovers. And not only that, partly to, because we'll all be campaigning on those things and we need to talk to each other.
Yeah, totally.
But we're also looking at working together to make sure we get Greens councillors back on council in 2 years' time.
Yeah.
So are you both prepared as well to see, keep looking at things and see things as local issues that can be valuable for promoting our very competent councillors that we have at present, and trying to undo any other kind of defaming that's going on to show that our councillors are actually making decisions for the better.
Absolutely, and we need some mentoring program within Greens where we can attract more people that are interested. There are people interested in being on council, and there's some Indigenous people interested, so we need to have some mentoring provided for them so we can have them, you know, it'd be fantastic to have an Aboriginal voice.
Any more questions from the floor? A question, Terry?
Yes. Well, yes, it brings in the what you're talking about, the federal issues, and you will find that a lot of people mix them all up anyway. They don't care who's enough to just get out there and do it, you know. And so, and you made particular reference to dental, dentistry and those sort of issues, and that's been a big issue for the federal government. Yeah. And I'm just wondering, with trying to get dental care under Medicare, and I just want to know whether both of you, either of you are aware of what the federal government's doing in this regard, and how you can link in the local issues to that federal push of the Australian Greens.
We have state funding for it through our local health district, but it's not serving the needs of all the community effectively. Large waiting times, Indigenous people can access their Aboriginal medical services, and they can also access the state service. In the past, the federal government through Medicare were providing through the EPC vouchers after a care plan. That has ceased. It would be ideal to bring that back into being so that people can access dental services and assessed by GPs and nurses in primary health care, which would be best practice.
And compliance.
Yeah,
Needing to be
and you know, that needs to be monitored because that's where it fell down last time. Yeah.
Kay, a question.
So my question, it regards your role, should you be elected, your role as a representative of the Greens party. We know that there's been a lot of, especially in New South Wales Greens, there's been a lot of internal strife and frequent airing of internal issues in the public forum. So, and we know that that undermines the position of Greens in the community, and I'm not suggesting that our politicians are any better or worse than anyone else, but we do have the model of grassroots democracy and of transparency and non-violence, and we often don't see that demonstrated in our elected leadership. I wonder if you would be each prepared to comment on how you would negotiate those challenges should you be elected.
Well, at this stage, I'm aware of some of those issues, and
Well, there could be any issues going forward, couldn't there? There's often internal issues.
look, I think it's just best not to buy into it and stick to policy, stick to the agenda. I think people out there are sick of politicians spilling their guts publicly. I think what we need to do when it comes to being, you don't need to add anything to the comments, you just stick to the principles. And I think values such as respect, kindness, compassion, we need to bring that to politics. We just don't have it anymore. And I think people would really like to see a values-based approach to things that potentially could disrupt a political party. That's how I would manage it. I would recall on my values, okay?
Yeah, pretty much what Nina said. So when you've got a large group of people, you're always going to have differences of opinion and different personalities, etc. And while there might be sort of turmoil, whether it's two sides or just coming from one area, I'm really not interested in that. Such as Nina, I would prefer to just focus on policy and focus on why I entered politics and joined the Greens in the first place, which is just to actually help people and help improve the lives of the country, our local area, and vis-a-vis the world, etc. So yeah, I really don't play into those games, I suppose you could say. Not interested at all. It's the 4 pillars that I go by, and also the manifesto as well. So, but if someone needs to be, let me just say, if someone needs to be called out, I will call them out, because people need to know that there are limits to what I'm going to...
There's some things that are not okay.
Yeah, some things that are not okay, and you need to call things out when that's necessary. So I will do that, because we do have principles and we do have our own sort of moral compass, and that's important for people to know and to be supported as well. So.
Thank you.
If there are no more questions from the audience, I'll pose one. Are there any Greens policies to which you violently object or would be at least uncomfortable with dealing with any current Greens policies, state policies that you are aware of, that you don't agree with?
I don't think I've come across anything that I was vehemently against. I thought, no, I can't support that, and I haven't read every single one, but I have actually read through quite a bit. There's probably some tweaks that could go in somewhere, and we're always updating policy, but no, I can't think of something that I was just completely against. Probably just things that need updating as we do.
I have friends in the greyhound industry, and I am not for gambling or for cruelty to animals, but my friends in that industry were good people, and that whole situation about the greyhound dogs, that policy did impact these friends of mine. So if there's any policy, I love all the policies of the Greens. That's why I joined the Greens. They're the most values-based political party, and I'm proud to be part of it. But with that, I wouldn't be so black and white. It'd be just I would look at individual circumstances.
Okay. Well, in one particular circumstance might be, for example, culling of kangaroos. Do you have an attitude on that?
Do you want to go first, Nina?
No, you go first.
Okay, yeah, that is something that I toss and turn with, to be quite honest with you, because on one hand, you're just murdering animals, because you see the rhetoric in the media about how they're considered pests because they're eating the grass that the sheep should eat, and I don't buy that at all, and that might be a hard stance, but that's where I am. But also, you think about the way the Indigenous community have been living with the land for 65,000 years, and they did kill and consume kangaroos, but it was all quite balanced. So I know I might be sort of fence-sitting here a little bit, but I would like to see some sort of Indigenous involvement with keeping a balance of kangaroos, as is, you know, all being a part of this land, the humans and the kangaroos and the vegetation, etc. So I guess my answer really is no to culling kangaroos, but that's just straight out culling. But I'd like to see a more nuanced and balanced approach. Exactly. Yeah. Does that?
I'm with her on that. I like your idea.
Just being honest, yeah.
Yeah, I like your idea of Indigenous involvement.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
And at that, we'll leave it at that point and thank our potential candidates very much.